Yo, what's up, guys? NASJAQ here. So, this is a genetically engineered tree, and it's created by a startup named Living Carbon, who's creating these trees to solve climate change. 2 weeks ago, they raised $15 million, and I was kind of curious about how their technology works, so let's look into it. So, first off, they're genetically engineering the photosynthesis cycle. And to explain this, we need to know that there are a few different types of photosynthesis cycles in plants. There's the C3 cycle, there's the C4 cycle, and the CAM cycle. And they're essentially inserting the C4 cycle into the C3 cycle, so let's look at these two types. Now, the C3 cycle is found in like 85% of plants, and this is because it's useful when there's a lack of water or the conditions are dry. So in the C3 cycle, the initial fixation of carbon during photosynthesis occurs in the Calvin cycle. This is when the enzyme Rubisco adds carbon dioxide to RubP, and this creates a 3-carbon compound called 3-PGA. I'm not going to test you on this. Now, of course, our goal here is to capture carbon, but the problem with the C3 cycle is, like I said, it's efficient during dry conditions. And so the C3 cycle has a process called photorespiration, in which to reduce plant water loss in dry conditions, the stomata of the plant close. This blocks oxygen from escaping, and then the Rubisco enzyme starts adding oxygen to the RubP. And then this is broken down during photorespiration. Now, this is kind of a wasteful process for the plant. While it does conserve water, it doesn't actually produce sugar or ATP or any energy for the plant. So, like, it's not producing energy, it's not growing the plant. And in terms of storing carbon, it's extra bad because photorespiration ends up releasing water and CO2 into the atmosphere. So, like, it drew in carbon and then it just didn't store it. And this is where the C4 cycle comes in. So in the C4 cycle, before the carbon dioxide enters the Calvin cycle, the plant goes through a process to fix the carbon dioxide into a 4-carbon compound called malate. Then it enters the next level of cells and is broken down into carbon dioxide and pyruvate. And so in this process, the levels of carbon in the plant are always high enough for the Calvin cycle to be able to produce sugars. And this means that they avoid the photorespiration cycle, which releases the CO2, so the C4 cycle stores more carbon. So like I said, the C3 cycle is the most common. It's in 85% of plants, and this is because in dry conditions, which can happen to any plant really, they just want this photorespiration cycle to conserve water. And so what living carbon is doing is genetically engineering trees to survive in these drier conditions when it happens, but to use the principles of the C4 cycle to store more carbon. So remember how the C3 cycle doesn't produce sugar during the photorespiration? Well, they are creating a new process that occurs in the plant's chloroplasts to break down waste products. And instead of releasing carbon dioxide, it converts them into sugars and ATP and energy for the plant so the plant can grow and store more carbon. Now, to do this, they inserted different pieces of DNA into the plant genome. There were around 41 different types. And they found that 38 of these ended up being expressed in their test plants. And these 38 pieces of DNA expressed all of the genes that they wanted to express. And they confirmed that these plants were using the byproducts of photorespiration in the chloroplast. Instead of transporting it out and expelling CO2, they were converting it into sugar and ATP, and the plants grew bigger. So overall, these genetically engineered plants actually increased their biomass by 53% compared to the control plants. So 53% growth increase. I mean, that's pretty incredible. Obviously, this is like a smaller plant than a massive tree, but this is still great progress. So what are their next steps? Well, they've already started planting some of these. With Oregon University, they have a trial where they've already planted over 600 trees with the photosynthesis enhancement. And also for next steps, so they've planted some of these trees with the photosynthesis enhancement, but a byproduct of this photosynthesis enhancement is also that they can absorb more heavy toxic metals in the soil. So this means that if they plant the trees in areas with high levels of these toxic metals, the plants can actually absorb these and essentially clean the soil. There's not a ton of information on that process out there, but I can't wait to learn more about that aspect. Now, one thing that I do want to say is that in their mission statement, they say that like Mars is a waste of time. Mars is not an escape planet, which I agree with. Mars is not an escape planet, but I don't think it's a waste of time. Essentially, they aren't focusing on creating genetically engineered plants to like terraform Mars or anything. I think, maybe in a few years, we might see them start to do that. Maybe in like 10 years, they'll be like, hey, maybe we can take our genetically engineered plant technology and apply it to Mars. But for now, they're just focused on Earth. But otherwise, I think this startup is fascinating. I think they're really cool, and I can't wait to see them plant more trees and see this technology progress. Also, just a little update on my end is I don't know, you know, um, whatever. But the podcast should be coming back soon. I'm recording a podcast tomorrow and on Wednesday. So that should be back soon. When Peter Thiel was managing PayPal, the way that he managed people, he was like, look, you're only allowed to do one thing and you have to do it excellent. So I'm trying to figure out like what my one thing is. I don't know. Maybe making YouTube videos like this, or maybe the podcast is. And so I'm kind of just in an experimentation phase, just experimenting with a bunch of different things, trying to figure it out, guys. But anyways, that's my update. Some podcast soon. But other than that, I hope you guys are doing well, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.